The past 2.5 decades has seen Vanitha Datla acquiring experience across diverse sectors such as financial services, insurance services, cement, power, security printing, instrumentation and BPO services with stints in USA and India. She was awarded a silver medal for standing second in her graduating PGDBA class at ICFAI Business School. She also secured a place on the Dean's Honor Roll for achieving a perfect 4.0 GPA for 3 consecutive semesters while pursuing her undergraduate study at Wichita State University in the USA. A frequent speaker at various professional and academic forums, Vanitha is passionate about her women empowerment and contributing positively to women's issues. Apart from her professional career, she has keen networking skills which has helped her to be elected in industry associations. She served on various panels in CII at the state, regional, and national level over the last decade and continues to do so. She also served on the board of the ICFAI Business School Alumni Federation. She actively contributes towards strengthening the industry institute interface for the professional colleges under the Sri Vishnu Educational Society. She was part of its founding team and is the treasurer of WIN, Women in Network, an NGO that works closely with children and women of urban slums. An avid fitness person, she has participated in a number of 100 km, 150 km, and 200 km bicycle events and has conquered a couple of full marathons, many half marathons, and a 50 km ultra walkathon. She has completed many endurance and duathlon events and earned herself the tag of a duathlete. Trekking and adventure sports are other passions that has led her to visit the Everest Base Camp in Nepal, Mount Kailash near Manasarovar, Tibet and Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania, Africa, zipline in Alaska, snorkel in the Great Barrier Reef, and skydive in Southern California. She had learned to play the veena, piano, and classical Carnatic vocals at an early age and had dabbled in Vedic chanting. Additionally, she also enjoys listening to music, reading, spending time with her family, and writing articles about her travel exploits, but traveling remains her true passion and she has traveled around the globe extensively to more than 50 countries.
A person who has taken up several roles in her career and now serving as Vice Chairperson and Managing Director of Elico Ltd and Elico Healthcare Services at Hyderabad, India. An adventure enthusiast and who is into marathon running, hiking, mountain climbing, cycling, and a globetrotter. And I can go on and on, but we don't have so much time. So I'm talking about none other than the only Vanitha Datla. Vanitha, very warm welcome to International Women's Day 2022 celebrations of Forsys Inc. And this year's theme is Break the Bias. So we're going to cover a little bit on those topics, Vanitha. So first of all, I wanted to say, what does International Women's Day mean to you and this year's theme?
Thank you so much, Ramana, for inviting me to be a part of your International Women's Day celebrations. It's an honor for me, definitely, to be invited to such prestigious organizations and share my experiences. And like every year, and I've been seeing this from the last almost a decade or so, 8th March, International Women's Day has become a sort of a reminder for society, for community, for the nation at large to probably recognize its women's strength and recognize the women all around us and the strength and the value system that they bring to humanity as such. I would definitely like that all 365 days, people do it. Unfortunately, what happens in the whole, running of, one's life, we only allocate this particular day to recognize, but at least we recognize, this day that, the value that women bring to society itself has huge value to generations, and they should be lauded, they should be treasured, and I think corporations can become champions in this aspect. And Ramana, you did talk about break the bias, and today the entire theme is break the bias. And unfortunately, culturally, a lot of us get imbibed with unconscious biases that we don't realize it sort of hampers and hinders a lot of women in their growth. And probably if this awareness happens, then it would actually bring about change in the mind shift and allow a lot more women who have aspirations but require a supporting ecosystem to help them realize their ambitions and their dreams. So I think every individual on this planet, we will have to consciously look into what are the areas that where we are tending to discriminate on the basis of gender, and can we now then consciously call out those issues and maybe then allow for equal opportunities to everybody. See, today we are talking about, in this century, we're talking about gender bias against women. Maybe in 100 years, when we achieve gender parity, then we might have to look at the third gender. We might have to look at people who are transgenders, who are See, diversity means including every person, every individual, irrespective of their gender, their ethnicity, the geographic location they come from, their cultural backgrounds. So I think this is one of the ways where we can start truly including every person into whatever opportunity that is open to them.
Great. You have touched on several of the main points, right? I mean, included in the equality and, about the gender. And so let's talk a little bit about the gender biases. I mean, culturally in India, right? I mean, basically women still continues to be more at home and then taking care of the household stuff, even when they are single or married or whichever state they are in. But then the companies are opening up more positions for women. It's there, but it's not being utilized. So how can we do, as on the corporate level, to appeal our positions more to women, and so that they can continue? So some of them start the work and then leave it off at a certain point. And then how can we actually tackle those kind of issues?
So Ramana, you did bring out a point that corporates need to recognize this. And if you look at statistics today, India is actually pretty poor on the gender parity index, especially women representation in the workspace. And actually post the pandemic has really disrupted a lot of lives. But post the pandemic, the representation of women in the workspace has fallen right from almost 26% to about 19%. So over the last decade, we've seen this decline happening, which is not going to be good for the nation. In fact, if you look at progressive companies or progressive countries, the percentage of women that are actually there in the organized sector, if that is high, then those companies or those organizations or those countries actually are more prosperous. And this is what a learning that we should also take. In fact, if you look at progressive companies, they do have excellent HR policies that enable women to continue through whatever challenges or milestones that a woman has to face. All of us know that women have a lot of biological milestones that we need to carry along with our professional phase. I mean, we cannot say that just because I'm having a baby that I should be excluded from the workspace. Today, progressive companies are actually building in fantastic HR policies that enable them to allow women to spend maybe few days in the office, few days at home to balance all her household and other responsibilities. Another thing I'd like to call out is we need male champions. We need men to also understand, to empathize, and to share the load. This is extremely crucial because while the child, carrying the child for 9 months and delivering, post the baby's arrival, I think the father or the spouse can also help in grooming the child, in child rearing, which of course in the Indian culture and society is always 99% left to the women of the household, or maybe the mother or the mother-in-law comes and the grandparents step in. But I think going forward, the millennial generation will have to understand that everything, I think if it is shared between both the spouses or both the partners in a system, makes life all the more easier. And I think men should champion their spouse's career. I think you've done that extremely well, Ramana. I know Varija has been doing an excellent job in her own career. So we need male role models, and I think we need to acknowledge, we need to applaud, we need to recognize, because tomorrow if you become a true role model to the next generation, then your sons-in-law will also want to emulate you. And this is what we need going forward.
Absolutely. That's a great thing. I mean, on the corporate side, I do see, HR policies and everything. I do see some companies, especially in the Western world, more time offs for the dads, basically, right? And so that they can pitch in, and help the moms, and when the moms can go. I do know a few cases, they have done that. I think those kind of changes have to be brought in, more in the Indian companies, and, make sure, men are given that opportunity, and also not an excuse to say, hey, I don't have the time to do that. Great points. Let's talk a little bit about the stereotypes, Vanitha. Right? Front office desk work. Usually they think, women aren't good at that. And then probably, men can do equally good or better flight attendants. These are all like stereotypes. in your view, what can we do? I mean, I know it's about more about thinking, but I'm talking about more on the corporate level. I mean, do we define these roles both for men and women, and how do we attract?
So what you've been saying, Ramana, is very true, and it's very difficult to break into stereotypes and break cultural mindsets as such. In fact, I was at a program where a colleague of mine was saying that at his own company, he was actually awakened to the fact that parental leave is a must, and until then, what was thought of a good HR policy of increasing maternity leave, say from 14 weeks to 26 weeks, that's been mandated by law now. But he felt that parental leave, where you do not actually make any difference between the genders, and being a parent itself is enough, that you need to take that leave, be at home and take care of the child. So what actually triggered him is one day he was at the elevator in his office waiting to go to his office room, and he saw one of his managers in the shop floor, and he was actually distributing laddus to everybody, saying, I just became a father, I'm so happy. So apparently he came to this gentleman, my colleague, and said, please sir, have this laddu, I just became a father this morning. So this gentleman, who was the owner of the company, asked him, when did the baby arrive? So he said, this morning the baby came at around 5 or 6 o'clock, and I went to the hospital at 7:30, and then I've now come off to office. So that actually shook this person, saying that, does that absolve you? I mean, being a man, being a father, does it just mean that you go visit your wife and the baby and then you come off to work? Does that absolve you of your parenthood? No. And so that's when he went back to his board and he said that we need to enforce parental leave, and we need to enable the men also to take an equal share in parenting. So I think empathetic leaders like that will actually help in breaking the unconscious bias or the stereotypes. Because what do stereotypes say? Because we say that when a father becomes a father, he just needs to spend an hour in the hospital, maybe give his good wishes, bless the baby, and then he should, because his career actually has more priority than his family, and therefore he needs to go off to work. And also the family and the culture is also in that way that even if the father goes off to work, nobody bats an eyelid, because they say that is what he's supposed to do, and we need to support him to do that. So that's where the breaking of stereotypes happen, when people in those roles that have the ability to influence a major part of society are breaking these stereotypes, and they are walking the talk. This is where I think male champions need to actually be more vocal. They need to exhibit it in their behavior. If that happens, then yes, we know that Ramana did come to office. He did give the laddu, but then he went back and he stayed with his wife, and he's been there with his wife and the baby for the next 1 month or 2 months. And that is what we need to exhibit. And that does not devalue you as a corporate worker. Because if you actually spend that time and you bond with the baby and then you come back much more relaxed, you will definitely add better value to your workspace. And that should be recognized, because I know of a lot of people who do physically come to work, but then their minds are back at home and they are stressed out. So that is not actually adding any value. But because we have the male stereotype that no, you have to be very masculine, you should not show your emotion. And today we know that mental health is also being talked about so much. So these are things that I think consciously this generation, we should start breaking into those stereotypes. If we start chipping away at that, I know it may be just a drop in the ocean, but at least that drop will add to that ocean.
Absolutely. I mean, you brought to a very interesting point. On the corporates, always striving for the employee well-being. And it's a big thing, especially during the pandemic. So many people have been hit directly or indirectly. So, but how do you bring about the awareness about how important mental health is and how important it is for them to take care of it?
So you very rightly pointed out that there is a lot of stigma attached to this. And this stigma actually comes from culturally, maybe as leaders or as people of certain standing should not show our weaknesses. See, as a person, everybody has their ups and downs. Everybody has strengths and weaknesses. While we celebrate the strengths, we should also understand the weaknesses and support the weaknesses, probably give them an additional support. Today, as you very rightly pointed out, mental health has become a major issue, and especially in the IT sector, because of maybe the time, the work pressure, the deadlines that they need to face. So much of pressure is being mounted, and very youngsters, whether girls or boys, in the aspect of girls, they probably quit because this drives them to quit, and they say that we cannot handle all this stress, so we will take it off and we'll become homemakers. For men, they don't even have that, opportunity to become stay-at-home dads, because society says that we have to be the bread winner or the bread earner, and so we need to be out in the workspace. But here is where corporations, especially top management in corporations, can show their empathy. They can show in their HR policies that there is you can take time off if you need to de-stress. You can take time off if you want mental relaxation. So these things need to also be part of the HR policies, and companies need to also walk the talk. We cannot just say something outside and then not actually exhibit it among our own employees. So as top leaders and as members of top management, if we understand and if we are able to empathize and support and offer also the true self, that we are also facing these challenges, we are also facing these issues, we also have weak moments, and we are willing to listen. I think that itself will help all these employees coming out. They will definitely seek support if they feel that they are not being harmed by seeking that support, if they are not being stigmatized by seeking that support. Today we have that concept of stigma. If I'm feeling depressed, I cannot openly go and say that I'm feeling depressed. But I think we should start forming these small maybe networks within the organization that is actually a safe space for them, that will actually help them to come out and open about themselves. And I think as top management, we can create those spaces, that safe way working culture for them to be able to come out freely with their with their opinions, with their expressions, and then help supporting them, because at the end of the day, human asset is the most valuable asset for any company, and in their growth can the company grow. So we don't want them to bear the brunt of these stresses. So if we can do even that little bit in supporting them, I'm sure that they become more loyal, they sort of become more aligned and engaged with the organization to take the organization to the next level.
That's a great point you pointed, Vanitha. I mean, having some kind of groups or divisions in the company, I mean, where they're showing we have that empathy, we can listen to you. And then this actually gives that, boost to an employee. Hey, the company is actually caring. And that's what most employees look for. How much is the, care I'm getting at the company? And then that's a great point. So you have come a long way. I mean, from your much younger days, and I know you personally, and then you might have, come across so many biases, and then you have, you're so successful. So you're probably, encountered those and also came up with your own ways of dealing with it. Can you give us a few tips for our employees? I mean, how they can do it if they face it?
So very right, Ramana. In fact, even till date, I always face these biases. And I think it's because society is like that. And I might be an outlier, that I've never let those biases, created obstacles for me in my own growth. I think my aspiration was much more bigger than that bias. So I always found a way, across, under, or over that bias to be able to navigate that and to be able to come out onto the other side. First and foremost, during my childhood, I come from a very conservative society which has never seen women actually break out of the household and become something, not more than a homemaker, even though they are educated. I mean, we've got family members who've done their masters during my childhood, but they've only stayed back at home. Formal career was never expected of them. It was never encouraged. So I think growing up, of course, I always wanted to emulate my father, who was a doctor, and I wanted to become a doctor like him. Unfortunately, destiny had different things in store for me. So at a very young age, I got married and I shifted to the US. And I think the culture in the US made me realize that to be financially independent it is actually a good thing for a woman especially. And I saw this in the US, and I thought that at any time of my life, I should become financially independent. And I'm very thankful that I found a supportive husband in Ramesh, and he also felt the same, because he also personally felt that when he was growing up, he lost his father at a very young age. And he found that his mother lost the anchoring, because she was a woman who was dependent on the male support of the family. And as a result, at a very young age, their entire family, like he has 3 elder sisters, and his father passed away, and there was nobody to anchor that family. So as a result, what happened is different sections of the family took each one of them and they all had to break off, and they couldn't live together as a cohesive family. So he didn't want that to happen. If he passes away, he didn't want that to happen with me. So he said, see, I should make you financially independent, and I think you should aspire for whatever dreams you have. And I think that was very good in the way he supported me almost 3 decades back, when this was unheard of in our community. As a result, once we moved back to India and I had 2 very young children, I personally went to my grandfather and asked him, can I come and work for you? And he's never had women come and ask for him, ask to come and work at his organization. Of course, he's got a number of grandsons, and he's always groomed the grandsons to take over after him. Never the granddaughters, because he always felt that we were somebody else's property, just to be taken care of until marriage, and then you give the property to the other family. But that is how the culture is in India. Luckily, of late, culture has changed, and I think in my own family, had I not break the bias at that point and chosen to overcome that bias and go into the workspace and join the organized work sector, today my daughter or my daughter-in-law would have faced the same obstacles. But because I was able to break those obstacles, today it is much easier. Today, of course, a lot of people say, what is your daughter working? Is she working? Where is she working? 3 decades back, that wouldn't have been the case. I mean, they would have said, is she married? Does she have children? Those were the questions that one would have asked. But today it's different. So I think it is our responsibility, every individual's responsibility, to break the bias, to break stereotypes, to start improving the mindset. And that's how, as a community, as a society, we will evolve. And that has to happen much faster, of course, in the Indian scenario.
You brought up really, really great point. I mean, the point is start at home, right? What you preach, you start at home, and then that's what exactly you did. And then, and you set a path to the next generations. I wanted to talk a lot with you, but I will have one last question, Vanitha. Now you have a 2-year-old granddaughter. How do you see her world to be ideally for as a woman when she grows up? And what would you set something different so that, that generation will have the world you visualize?
Yeah, so I have 2 granddaughters. One is almost touching 5, and of course, the younger one is 1.5. And I've just recently read some UN reports which says that gender parity is going to take another 100 years to achieve worldwide. I mean, they're looking at a worldwide phenomenon, and countries that are not very high on the gender parity index, like India, which we are actually very low in the gender parity index. Today, we are at the 140th position, which is pathetic out of about 170 nations. In countries like this, it will take almost 150 years for gender parity to achieve. And I would like to see a gender parity world. So that means that my granddaughters also may not see a gender parity world, but that does not absolve our responsibility. I think at every generation, we need to be responsible enough to create a sustainable future for the next generation. And can we then start removing archaic laws, archaic policies? Can we start chipping away at all these mindset, and whether it is gender stereotypes or unequal opportunities for different genders? We will have to start walking the talk today. If we walk the talk today, we might just cross 100 meters, while we need to cross 100 kilometers. So every meter will then start adding to that, and successive generations, yes, my daughter and daughter-in-law's generation will have to take that a little further. My granddaughters will have to take it a little further, but I'm hoping that the discrimination will start reducing by the time it comes to their level, and it becomes all the more easier, and maybe exponentially they will be able to achieve gender parity much more faster than what we have been facing. So that, I think, is my personal commitment to my life. In my lifetime, if I can start removing a lot of areas in the span that I control, it could be my family, it could be my own company, it could be the society that I reside in, and I'm being a role model there, and I'm trying to being very vocal in calling out discrimination and being very vocal in recognizing people who are actually doing good. I think that will start helping the next generation, and I'm hoping that by the time my granddaughters come to their 20s or 30s, when they join the formal workspace, that they will be much more stronger, much more confident in being able to probably look at different set of problems, not the problems that we have faced. And I think that is my urge and my prayer going forward.
Great. Thank you so much for the insights, and I hope we will have that growth and we break the bias. And,
yes.
Yeah. And thank you so much, Vanitha, for joining us at Forsys and doing our celebrations for International Women's Day 2022. And your thoughts and insights has been really, really helpful. And hopefully, as our leadership will look into it keenly, and then we also try to implement some of your thoughts. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Ramana, and thank you for the entire team for giving me a patient listening. I hope that all of you have a wonderful International Women's Day. And I would also urge every man and women to understand that it is only walking hand in hand together that we will achieve our combined aspirations and dreams. So please look at this International Women's Day as a day to sort of reconfigure our commitment to our women in our lives and help them gain the opportunities and the dreams that they aspire for. So thank you once again for inviting me. I was very happy to share my thoughts with all of you.
Thank you.